Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Tonight on Our News, new COVID testing requirements rolled out as the war on COVID continues. Plus, thousands of cruise passengers descend on downtown Nassau as 6 cruise ships call on the port of Nassau. And later, regional concerns over Russia's invasion of Ukraine factor heavily in discussion at CARICOM. Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, changes are on the way for secondary COVID-19 testing requirements. Acting Prime Minister Chester Cooper making the announcement today, saying the decline in COVID-19 cases has prompted officials to further loosen testing requirements. Jasmine Brown reports.
What is going to happen once the gazetting is done, effective immediately, what we knew as the 5-day test will be eliminated. So it is the post-travel test after you come to the Bahamas, that test will be eliminated.
The most recent rules came into effect earlier this month, mandating that people traveling to the Bahamas or to other islands from either New Providence or Grand Bahama must undergo secondary testing on the 5th day after arriving. Cooper says the expected changes will not impact the tests needed to enter or exit the country.
For the avoidance of doubt, you still require a test to enter the Bahamas. What we are going to offer to our guests is a free rapid test for their outgoing travel. So as you now know, persons require a rapid test to enter the U.S., for example, rather than having the post-travel 5-day test. We will offer that as a part of the travel health visa program.
When it comes to secondary testing, Cooper says the pending changes to the rules is a result of the much improved COVID situation in the Bahamas and noted that more revisions can be expected. When asked if there are concerns about there being any increase of cases with the elimination of secondary testing, Cooper said this.
We're not concerned at this point. If you look at the actual numbers of new cases and hospitalizations around the world, you see that the numbers are very low. We're making the adjustments as we go along. We have recommendations from our stakeholders in the sector for further relaxation of our protocols. And suffice to say, we're looking at them.
Now, when it comes to implementing those other recommendations, the acting prime minister says he doesn't have a date for that. However, he says his ministry will ensure that things be done as quickly as possible. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Thanks, Jasmine. 2 years into the pandemic, COVID-19 is still having a staggering impact on pregnant women, as health officials in the region are reporting a large increase in COVID-related deaths among pregnant women beginning in August 2021.
We must prioritize women to ensure that they are shielded from the worst of the pandemic.
According to a PAHO study of COVID deaths among pregnant women in the region, more than 365,000 pregnant women in the Americas contracted COVID over the past 2 years. More than 3,000 of them died.
This is a tragedy, especially now that we have safe and effective vaccines. Even though most countries in the region recommend the vaccination of pregnant women, the uptake of COVID-19 vaccines is still very low.
1 in 3 women in the Americas did not access critical care in time. It's an issue PAHO recognizes is affecting more and more women and girls around the world as access to essential healthcare services is limited.
Post-rape care has been particularly disrupted by the pandemic. It is unacceptable that women who have been raped do not get the care and support that they need, including preventive health care related to HIV and other STIs, sexual and reproductive and mental health care.
Dr. Etienne says the future well-being of women and girls depends on investing in essential care. In other news, 6 ships carrying more than 12,000 passengers docked at the Nassau Cruise Port today for the first time in the port's history. Nassau Cruise Port Limited Operations Manager Marcus Williams.
It's definitely the first time we have had these 6 ships in. It means a lot for Nassau Cruise Port, downtown Nassau, and the Bahamas. It shows that we are ready to receive the biggest and the best cruise lines.
Today, the port received Carnival Cruise Line ships Carnival Sunshine and Carnival Legend, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line's Brilliance of the Seas, Enchantment of the Seas, and Independence of the Seas, and MSC's Merviglia.
Biggest ships are coming on board, and we expect the largest one in the world in a couple of days, the Wonder of the Seas. So we already welcome the biggest ships, and now it's just going and growing as we come out of this pandemic.
Meanwhile, the request for proposal process for the purchase of Grand Lucayan Hotel ended hours ago, and Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism Chester Cooper says they are closer than ever to sealing the deal.
We have gotten a significant level of response. The process doesn't close until 5 p.m. today, so we don't yet have a formal briefing. But based on what I've seen, there are several what I would consider credible responses.
A cooler evening this Ash Wednesday. Meteorologist Greg Thompson joins us from the Weather Center. Good evening, Greg.
Thanks, Christine, and a happy Wednesday evening, the beginning of Lent. This is Ash Wednesday. I hope you got out there to get your ashes. Notice my forehead, I got some ashes there on my forehead. But yeah, nice, beautiful conditions outside our studios. Temperatures in low 70s, clear skies. That front boundary down deep south, so you see that in our satellite picture. Northeast winds at 7 miles per hour, and your feels like temperature standing at 72. Satellite view, that front boundary weakening across the southeast Bahamas. Still some patchy clouds associated with that down in that area, but blue skies across most of the Bahama chain earlier today. I mean, we'll continue to see some very nice weather extending across the entire chain of islands tonight through tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. Regional leaders weigh in as the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues. That's coming up when our news returns. And later, Ash Wednesday services attract thousands of churchgoers today. Stay with us.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamik.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine factoring heavily in discussions at the intersessional meeting of CARICOM underway in Belize. Tanya Smith Cartwright spoke with Press Secretary Clint Watson on the issue earlier today.
What are the ministers' real fares? And also, what is RPM's take on the whole thing?
As you can imagine, it was not something that was planned on the agenda, but as we were all arriving here, we saw what was happening in Ukraine. And of course, you cannot avoid what happens around the world because it has implications to the Caribbean region. Food supply, most of the Caribbean's food comes from the United States, and that's being impacted obviously through transport and through shipping. So the concern is we'll be able to feed ourselves. We'll be able to get goods and supplies into our businesses. So how will it impact commerce really is the big concern for regional leaders. So Prime Minister, it's the same thing for the Bahamas, especially since pretty much all of our food supply is shipped in. So our concern is being able to make sure that we can get adequate supply, the cost, keeping the costs down because of the rising cost of transportation, oil, and shipping. It all impacts the prices at home. So his direct concern is ensuring that Bahamians are not seriously impacted significantly.
Works Minister Alfred Sears expressing serious concern over escalating gas prices, pledging government's commitment to ease the burden for Bahamians. Over the past 2 weeks, Bahamians have seen a rise in prices at the pump. Sears' comments come one day after Prime Minister Philip Davis pledged the same.
The government is committed. I am part of a cabinet subcommittee dealing with energy. And in addition to the Ministry of Finance providing support for the hedge strategy, We're looking at a number of other options, such as moving towards a cleaner form of energy that will also reduce the costs.
Shifting gears, some Bahamian gold medalists have waited more than 20 years for government to provide infrastructure to the plots of land they were awarded. Today, government said infrastructure is on the way. Bethany McDermott reports.
The signing comes years after the Golden Athlete subdivision was conveyed to the athletes. For this, Works Minister Alfred Sears apologized.
On behalf of the government, we extend an apology for conveying the land and failing up to now, 20 years, to install the infrastructure.
Charles Stubbs of Stubbs Equipment is the contractor for the project, which started 1 week ago. In the absence of the infrastructure, one of the Golden Knights, Ramon Miller, still built on his allotted land, which was granted to him in 2014. Back in October, Miller spoke out and called on the government to assist with the issue. Sears admitted that the issue was only brought to his attention through Miller's advocacy. The contracts will include site investigations and surveying, installations of utilities, drainage, roadworks, and sidewalks, among other things. He puts the cost at just over $1 million.
The price of the contract is $1,227,953.10, and there is a completion date of 270 days.
The 23 acres of land, which was divided into 10 lots, were given to Debbie Ferguson, Tonique Williams-Darling, Pauline Davis-Thompson, Chandra Stirrup, Aldis Clark-Lewis, Savathita Fines, Chris Brown, Demetrius Pinder, Ramon Miller, and Michael Matthew. But while the infrastructure is on the way, some athletes like Golden Girl Pauline Davis face other issues.
At the same time, while I'm excited and happy, there's a part of me that's a little depressed, because I now recognize that that beautiful gift that the Bahamians have given to us, there are some of us, and that includes me.
Meanwhile, Miller said he's grateful for the movement.
I want to say thank you from all the Olympians, all of my Olympians, Shanae Miller, Stephen Gardner, Chris Brown, the Golden Girls, all of us, we really appreciate it, and hopefully, this jumpstart and give them some motivation to be home and, just to live comfortable, yeah.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Bethany McDermott.
When Our News comes back from the break, it's Ashes for Ash Wednesday. Our Megan Shepard is there as hundreds get their symbolic crosses. Plus, a Second Chance program is revived. Stay with us.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamika.
This is Our News. Welcome back. Millions of Christians around the world marked the start of the Lenten season with Ash Wednesday. Our Megan Shepard is at Holy Trinity Anglican Church tonight, where several services were held today. Megan?
Thanks, Christina. And as you mentioned, churches did see larger than normal crowds today, and that is thanks to the loosening of COVID-19 protocols and restrictions, which now allow churches to have up to 50% capacity. These pastors I spoke with today say they are anxiously awaiting 100% capacity when they can fill their sanctuaries. However, in the meantime, they will continue to spread the message of the gospel, and today's message focused on Ash Wednesday, an observance Christians across the country mark every year, sometimes without a second thought. In this report, pastors remind Christians of the basics, the significance of the ashes, and the journey for the next 40 days.
It's a sign not to say that I'm holy. It's actually a sign to say that I'm trying to be holy, that I'm a sinner, and I need God's help, grace, and mercy.
Christians around the world today displayed crosses made from ashes. The symbol worn on the forehead is just one observance to mark the beginning of Lent, the most solemn yet significant season on the liturgical calendar. Rector of the Most Holy Trinity Anglican Church, Father D'Angelo Bowe, spoke to the significance of the Ash Wednesday Mass.
The ashes are there to remind us that, one, we are dust, and to dust we shall return. It is a sign of our human mortality, and to always be mindful that we are only here but for a time. It is a symbol of our penitence. If we go back to Old Testament times, one of the things that you find is when persons were in time of mourning, a time of repentance, you hear the scripture speak about being clothed in sackcloth and ashes.
Over at Sacred Heart Catholic Church, Father Anselm Russell invited his parishioners to look within and invite the presence of the Holy Spirit. While many Christians have grown up observing Lent, sometimes without a second thought, Father Russell is reminding Christians of the true meaning of these 40 days.
Catholics are asked to not necessarily give up something, perhaps do something extra. But Ash Wednesday and Good Friday are holy days of obligation in terms of fasting and abstinence. Fasting, meaning consuming one full meal, and one can consume 2 smaller meals which would not equal to a full meal. Abstinence means to abstain from meats.
Lent is also a time of sacrifice. However, Father Bowe believes that this has become too traditionalized, rather than focusing on the true intent, which is discipline and to draw closer to God.
Seeing our fasting, our penitence, and the giving up as a means of sacrifice to instill discipline, to help us on our journey, to help us to cope and to gain strength with all the challenges that we will face on our daily lives.
Now, over the next 40 days, Christians will focus on the earthly journey of Christ, culminating on the Triduum, the 3 holy days, and Easter Sunday. Reporting for Our News from Holy Trinity Church, I'm Megan Shepard. Christina?
Well, with conflict raging on in Ukraine, many are wondering how businesses around the world and here at home will be impacted. In particular, the impact of inflation on investment decisions. RF VP of Investments, David Slatter, joins us virtually with a closer look. David, welcome.
Hi, Christina. Thank you.
So, David, tell us, what are some of the key risks or possible risks for Bahamian investors when it comes to inflation?
Well, there's no doubt the conflict in Ukraine has aggravated, the rapid rise in prices that we've been seeing actually since last year. So to give you an idea, the price of oil was up around 60% last year to around $77 a barrel, and now it's up year to date another 43% to around $110 a barrel. Since the invasion, around, the price of oil is up around 15% of that 43%. So it's material, but the key driving factor behind inflation right now is simply strong economic growth last year globally, and strong economic growth expected this year as well as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So commodities, whether it's oil, whether it's wheat, all commodities, the prices have gone up materially, and it's just something that's going to be with us for the medium term. It's not a short-term issue. It's more of a medium-term issue for us.
So for people who may be new to investing, is there anything that can be considered a safe investment right now?
Well, when it comes to inflation, inflation erodes the value of one's wealth. So if you're not at least covering inflation, you're actually falling behind, you're losing ground. So this idea of very conservative investments, when you have high inflation, conservative investment can actually be somewhat detrimental. So you need to, I think, be willing to take on a little more risk. That usually means looking to equities, looking beyond, say, your standard fixed deposits, and taking a little more risk. Now, in a period of inflation, it's essential that we all look at our budgets and find areas where we can cut back. So we need to be prudent when it comes to spending so that we have something left over at the end of the paycheck for investing purposes.
And I know that will be key to all of us paying a little bit more attention to those budgets. As always, thank you, David, for your insight.
Thank you.
Well, in sports tonight, Major Leaguer Jazz Chisholm outlines his goals for the upcoming season. Marcellus Hall has more tonight in sports.
Thanks, Christina. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Yesterday, we heard from Jazz Chisholm. talking about trying to stay focused heading into the potential regular season. Seems as if that wait is going to take a little while longer than he anticipated. Let's find out more. Well, tough news for Jazz Chisholm and the rest of Major League Baseball's players. An agreement was not reached by the proposed deadline between the Major League Baseball Players Association and Major League Baseball itself, which means that now they will talk about cancellation of at least the first 2 series of this year's regular season and perhaps even more going forward. Jazz yesterday, talking at one of our local high schools, was asked about the potential season and what his ideas and plans are moving forward if the season gets underway.
I always have goals, but I don't think anybody think my goals be realistic. You feel me? I always have. I mean, I expect to hit 40 and then steal 40 and hit 300. That's just what I expect to do. Every time I step on the field, I expect to do that every year. You know what I mean?
And there it is. You look at sports for you here on this Wednesday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Marcellus. Still to come on our news, a Second Chance program gets new life. Plus, meteorologist Greg Thompson is back in studio. That's coming up when our news returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamik.
Welcome back to our news. Mostly sunny skies ahead. Greg is back in the Weather Center with the extended forecast.
Thanks again, Christina, and a happy Wednesday evening, everybody. Today is Ash Wednesday, and of course, this is the beginning of Lent. And as I mentioned, I hope you got out to get to your church and get some ashes. Got some of that on my forehead right now. Nice conditions across the islands. High pressure is building in behind a weakening frontal boundary that's just still lurking across the southeast Bahamas, some patchy clouds, maybe even a nice little shower too associated with that front still down there. But we expect that frontal boundary to continue to weaken. That high pressure will slide across the area. Nice conditions for today and tomorrow, but we expect those winds to strengthen as that high pressure will build across the western Atlantic. Beaching and boating conditions for the weekend looks to be hazardous, but we will keep you abreast of those things as they approach. Boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the northeast to east at 10 to 15 knots. Your seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Your high tide is at 7:47 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look at your extended forecast through next Wednesday. This is Lent. Make sure you get to your church of worship. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Greg. Well, after a 2-year suspension, the Youth Empowerment Program is back. For nearly 3 decades, this program was made available to thousands of young Bahamians. Cale Campbell reports on the return, albeit with limited capacity.
40 young Bahamians attended the relaunch of the long-running Fresh Start program since its suspension in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture Mario Boleg encouraged the participants, saying he hopes after the 16-week period of training they'll be ready to join the Bahamas workforce. Having already launched a program in Grand Bahama earlier this month, Boleg says there are plans for other Fresh Start programs to commence in other family islands.
This ministry is dedicated $2,500 to each student to ensure that we make sure that we empower the youths to make them productive citizens in this country.
Youth Officer and Program Coordinator Shanda Roberts said the program offers training in various fields including beauty trades, culinary and baking, office procedures, web design, and mixology. Participants also receive Bahama host and food handlers training.
At the culmination of this, we want them to retain long-term employment. We want them to be more hireable and employable.
Roberts spoke on returning to in-person instruction with the program, as well as the frustrations of having to conduct operations via Zoom, which led to suspension of the program in 2020.
The Zoom thing, especially for this program in particular, because of the population, did not work well at all. So we're happy to have them here, and we want them to know that this is their home.
Participants of the program spoke of what they hope to get out of the program and how scarce opportunities are for Bahamian youth.
Once you don't have that scholarship in place, you have to strap and claw and fight your way through for every opportunity that comes by.
I would love to have my own business, cooking business, so I look forward to see what happens.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Thanks, Cale. We wish them the best of luck. Well, thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.